My name is Bill Georges, as Rick said, and I'm the chairman of the New York State Association of Chiefs of Police, or NYSACOP, Traffic Safety Committee, and also one of the traffic safety outreach liaisons on our traffic safety team. I'm a 25-year veteran of the Albany Police Department, where I retired as Assistant Chief of Patrol, and I'm pleased to be here today to participate in Transfinder's first tactical tech safety. Transfinder, the company behind Patrolfinder, is a NYSACOP Platinum partner. I have spent a great deal of time learning about the company and their product, and I have to say it's impressive. The company actually started in the school transportation area, and there's a good chance that if your children ride a school bus, that bus has Transfinder technology on board to ensure a safe ride for all. So as all of you, I know a few things about patrols, and let me tell you, I asked a lot of questions of Transfinder CEO Antonio Civitella when I first heard about Patrolfinder, and what I saw and heard impressed me because it's yet another tool in the hands of officers to help them improve the way they police. Today, you're going to hear how the Schenectady Police Department was able to remove a crime hotspot with good old-fashioned police work and the help of sophisticated technology, and hear how Transfinder was approached by Chief Clifford of Schenectady PD to help solve some problems that his department was facing. You'll hear about how responsive Transfinder was to make Patrolfinder a mission-critical technology for police. Okay, you've heard enough from me. I look forward to the webinar, and it is my pleasure to introduce my friend and President and CEO of Transfinder, Tony Civitella. Tony, the floor is yours.
Boy, Bill, that was very nice. Thank you. And by the way, that picture, I just saw that, Chief. That was a picture that was taken right here in front of the office. Man, I think I was, the bulletproof vest made me look even slimmer and made me look tough for sure. Come on, guys. I think I am, somewhat tough here. But thank you for the introduction. There's a few things we're going to cover today, and obviously we're going to talk about what we've done here with Schenectady, and we're super proud of what we've done. And again, tons of things. Many of you guys may not know who we are as a company. We've been around for 37 years. We've really been a logistics company about school logistics. So we've been around, and really we're going to talk about what does that mean and what happened. And I'm going to really just turn it over to Chief Clifford. It's like, why did you start working in the police software? So these are things that we'll definitely be talking about. Clearly, it's technology. We love technology. We love everything about what we're doing. And of course, the respect of all the men and women that are in this field is always something that we can't forget. How all the men and women out there are making our lives better. And we also want to see, is this technology, let's get to the point that it's more mission critical. We know that it's about making officers safer, making the community safer, and of course, it's accountability. And of course, Chief and I have always talked about this. What does this really mean as a company, as a technology? Where did you guys want to see? Again, we're going to touch some stuff, but there's an area that I want to encourage in this webinar that you could pose questions. I also have here Moshe Benjamin. He is the Director of Public Safety here at Transfinder. So he's with us. He's going to be monitoring these questions. So please, Moshe, can you hear us? Can you say hello?
Yes, I can. Hello, everybody, and good to be with you. Looking forward to your questions.
So Moshe, please, you feel free to interrupt us at any time if you feel like it's a good, juicy one, good, juicy question. So give it to us. So obviously interactive as much as we can. I don't think we have that you could say anything. So again, thank you again for attending today's webinar. We're super excited. Again, you might have not heard about us in the police industry yet. We're touring the entire state, so we're almost every week we're going places and meeting a lot of your folks out there. So thank you for bringing us into your place. Again, Bill, I feel like I've known you. We have a conversation almost on a weekly basis. I think there's a spot. There's actually a chair for you at the dinner table now. I'm not sure if that was a joke or not, but my wife's like, you guys talk all the time. We should just at least have them come here every once in a while for dinner. So I hope it's the same with you. I don't know if you have during the holiday season coming up right now, there's a lot of food coming up here being Italian. So I don't know, maybe there's some food and some table spot at your place, but either way, I really want to turn over to Chief Clifford. Super grateful for his insight and really all the things he's given us so far on what to work on, of course. So, Chief, welcome to the office here, and love to hear. I think everyone wants to hear out there. Like, what are you guys doing? What's going on with this Patrolfinder? What's Schenectady doing? So, you want to give us a little bit of what are those guys working on? What are they doing?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate being here. Appreciate telling our story, leading up to the point where we're at right now. I think it's important to just tell the audience that Schenectady, New York is about 3 hours north of New York City. We're a community of about just under 70,000 people. Our department's 167 officers. So for a community our size, it's 11 square miles. So it's small, it's compacted, and we're a busy department, like many departments out there. And I've had the pleasure of being a chief now for 9 years. I've been a member of IACP. I've attended the National Academy, and I've learned from so many other police officers out there that what's happening in Schenectady is not unique to us. We all have the same pain points. We all have the same stories. So I'm sure a lot of people can relate to some of the things that we went through when I first got on the job 23 years ago. We were a pretty violent city. At one point, Schenectady was the home of General Electric, the founding home of General Electric. They employed nearly 50,000 people just there at our plant. And in the early 1900s, we had a population that was just over 90,000 people. So what we saw was that a lot of two-family houses were built in this community. And then when General Electric started moving throughout the world, and they downsized, where we're now close to just under 4,000 employees on the same plant. As you can probably imagine, a lot of these two-family houses became rental properties. Due to our proximity to a large city like New York City, a lot of the people came up to us living in these two-family houses, which created lots of problems. In the early 90s, like many communities, drugs just went throughout our neighborhoods. Open-air drug dealing led to violence. At one point, early in my career, I can remember we had 12 homicides, which for us was a lot. I'm proud to say that we are down to having, knock on wood, somewhere between 2 to 4 a year, which for us was a significant reduction. But more importantly, what you're seeing when you drive through Schenectady now is it just looks and feels safer. We're starting to clean the community up, and the police department's been a large part of that. And one of the things that I can attribute it to is that the methodology that we're deploying here as a police department, and we've been very fortunate that 9 years ago now, when I approached Tony about helping us out with some software to be able to help with our deployment of resources, he was interested in helping us out. We had a little blip in the road because of the pandemic. We weren't able to really get going right then. Well, I think we've been working on this now for over 3 years, nearly 4 years now. And we've really been able to make an impact, helping give our officers information in the field using this technology. And we're happy to talk more about that and some of the things that we're doing, which really have been driven down from our state agency, DCJS, in the form of methodologies like hotspot policing, problem-oriented policing, and things like that.
That's awesome. Well, thank you again. We learned a lot, and we're learning every day. This is our job, is to learn as fast as possible. I've heard the term drinking out of a fire hose, right? And I feel like when you drink out of a fire hose, it only does it hurt drinking, but also it hurts your eyes. I think it's hard to blink, right, Moshe? I think it's all those things. So, right, Rick, I think I don't know if I could even pull it off. I mean, my hair is already, the water's got to just be hitting everywhere, my earlobes, all that. So we're learning as fast as possible. One of the criteria is that when the chief wants us to build some software, I want to make sure that, well, whatever we build, is this going to be applicable to other police departments? So the thing about it is that software is great. By the way, it's awesome when it works, right, everybody? I mean, if it doesn't work, it's not great. But I want to make sure what we build for Schenectady, clearly, we don't just build it and leave it and set it and forget it. We got to continue adding more features, functionality, and we've done tons in the past several years. But is this product going to work for other police departments? So what do? We're going to our backyard. Our backyard is with in Schenectady County. So we went to all the other police departments, and obviously with Schenectady, with his help, we're like, hey, let's talk to Glenville, let's talk to Scotia. Scotia is tiny. How would they even benefit? I mean, they have about 12 sworn officers, a couple cars driving around any given moment. Like, how does it make sense? I mean, and by the way, that's not a typo. The square miles, it's little, it's small. Again, about a 1 or 2 square miles. That's the village. But how do they benefit? So we're going to talk about how very small, compact-sized police departments benefit, and even like Rotterdam, they have a lot of property checks and how those things, how they use it. And of course, we talk about hotspots. So there's a lot of things we're going to talk about. How we're getting more police departments here in New York State, and really we're getting them throughout the country. We're pushing now in New Jersey. We're also pushing in Texas. So you're going to hear all about these things. So if some of you are from those states, welcome here, and you're going to hear more about us. So we talk about this experience, right, Chief? And this is the part about these patrol points. And you want to really, when you see this map, I don't know if it's visible from you guys, as the patrol officer is driving around, it acts as a navigation system. There's a map, it rotates, but you're going to start seeing these little dots. And these dots are the patrol points. It's really what the chief came to us saying, I want to know places where we're not going. I'm sure everyone's got GPS. By the way, you don't just have GPS. You have multiple items in your car, even your body-worn cameras, right? Mm-hmm. There's GPS. There's GPS everywhere. So knowing where you've been is easy. Everyone's got that. But how about identifying places you've not been? And so that's been really, we solved that. I think we solved that problem. We'll talk more about these special attention points, like the property checks, the wellness checks, all these things. And then we're talking about potentially, as we do the warrants, right? How we even utilize those. Bulletins, bolos, seeing each other as the other officers see each other as they drive around. And I'm surprised at how many police departments out there still doesn't have that. It's because it's not available. If it is, it's just not easy. And by the way, when it's hard to get data, it's not easy, it probably doesn't get utilized. And that's the tough part, right, Chief? I mean, what do you think about that, right?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I'd like to just point out here on this initial concept here with the officer experience is that when I was a rookie officer being trained, one of the things that all my field training officers told me was, do your best to hit every street in your zone. And that always resonated with me. Whenever I would work, I would do my best. We all know how things are. Sometimes the radio dictates where you go, but when the radio doesn't tell you where to go, try to hit every street, fly the flag, as we like to say, and let people see you out there patrolling. We know that there's a residual effect of you driving down the street, of you spending time in an area where it's going to actually impact that community, where somebody looks and sees that you're there and they feel safer, or a potential criminal sees you there and decides not to commit the crime in that area. So with that concept being in mind, I started thinking about my patrol patterns, where if I'm not really actively thinking about hitting these streets, I tended just to do a figure 8 through my AOR, and I just kept doing that repeatedly, and then I'd ride the next shift on overtime with somebody who would have that same patrol pattern. And I started thinking about, what about these parts of this neighborhood that just rarely ever get to see a police officer? So that's where this idea came from, is, hey, how can we actually track where we've been and let the officer know areas that either they haven't been or their colleagues haven't been either over the last few shifts that have been worked. So that was the premise of the GIS tracking of where the cars are going. And then from there, sky was the limit. We said, well, what about location-based bolos or location-based situational awareness things like, hey, there's a gun in that house. And we just took off with it as far as ideas. And the ideas, Tony already mentioned it, that warrants or locations of sex offenders or probationers, parolees, sky's the limit on what you could actually map out, which isn't unique to other mapping software, but being able to have it pop up as the officers drive around in this experience is especially effective.
So let me tell you about this point, whenever we presented our solution, I'm seeing faces in the crowd. I'm like, you already got that stuff. We know we could see cars. We could see all these things. We could see that, well, maybe you do. And maybe you have multiple systems that maybe you have to log into multiple things. It's possible. It's possible. But what you probably don't have is this screen. And really, this is what the chief was talking about. These are called patrol points. We have identified every single street. Again, it's in his police zone. Every street is identified. Every street is identified. And then what we do is we mark them in a way that there's a patrol goal. What's the goal? Is it every 4 days? Is it 6 days? All that stuff. So which means, if it's every 4 days as you drive, it's almost like, think about these timers. These timers are all over your streets that as you drive over the timer starts counting down. Let's say it's 4 days. Well, as soon as 4 days and 1 minute, they appear, and you can see on the map here, they're actually visible. You could see them on the map. By the way, some of these you don't see a dot. Why? Because as you drive over those dots, they disappear. Again, that's the configuration. Do you notice some of these dots are a little bit bigger than others? Because maybe we've passed the 4 days, and it's okay. But when you reach the 7th or 8th day that you haven't been there, let's go there. And I think some of the examples that we even have that in your case, you have even red dots, meaning those have been like 12 days we have not been there. And by the way, I haven't seen those in a long time. But when we first started, they would be normal. There have been areas that his officers didn't make it because, why? Because they didn't know. It's either that figure eight or thinking, oh, it's Rick been there. I'm sure Rick was there. So when we're talking about the lineups and the shift send off, these are big. And again, not just places you've not been, there's other things, right? The crime and so forth. So pretty cool things. Moshe, how we doing? Are we any questions? We got anything? Are you monitoring questions?
I am moderating.
You're gonna make sure you're gonna let us know right away, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, good.
Absolutely.
You please interrupt us.
We will.
And by the way, please get some questions going. Don't make me look bad, right? I'm in front of the chief. Come on. All right. So that again, very unique about patrol points and how it's being used. I think that is a unique piece and came right out of the feedback. So it was really first level. Then as we keep going, we're adding these other items, these attention points. These are key points that, again, also time-based. That can have a time, appear, disappear, or based on it. If the car drives there, do certain things. Again, it's a place where to see what's going on in that neighborhood. There's a previous crime. It's an active crime. A lot of things going on here. Bolos, again, I'm bringing a lot of things in here. Patrol points and attention points. Really not necessarily an industry term, but we're making those up to understand what does this really mean. And so one of my favorite scheme here is this right here. So we talked about as these calls, these attention points that could either be entered by the police officers themselves, right? They can actually report it. It's really the whole idea of if you ever use Google Maps or Waze, that you could say, there's a car on the road or there's a lot of potholes. There's a lot of potholes a lot around this area. Holy cow. I mean, it's crazy amount of cold. So potholes are, I feel like every once in a while they're filling it in, but I think they're not catching up because it's really bad. Or it could just be an accident. and so forth. So you could report it themselves. The officer could do it. You know, the crime analyst could do it. And if you do have certain CAD system, even that data can come from a CAD system. Tons of stuff. No big deal. Again, probably saying, I got it. What do I need this thing? I already have it. But you know, it's these things. But really the cool thing about it is that what happens when a call was either closed or cleared. And we talked about this, right? For the safety of the officers, like what's a good example? Like if a shot's fired at a house, you know, maybe you make an arrest. But for the other officers, I mean, it's ideal to keep that act, maybe change the color. But now as I drive around, I know that maybe Bill made an arrest. Unless I was part of the handoff, it could be a day later. I might not even know there's something going on in that house. As I drive, it stays there, right? You want to say anything about that? I think that was another huge secret sauce of ours, is this gray, really closed, clear call.
Yeah, the where we first really started talking about attention points was, you know, once we started building upon this GIS basis, one of the pain points we have is calls in waiting, pending calls. We religiously have 20 calls waiting. Then you look at them close, and we're really good at getting to priority 1 calls, which are the high priority ones. The lower priority, the level 3 calls, they sometimes could sit there for 4, 5, 6 hours. So in order to reduce our pending calls and perhaps give a better level of service to our community, what we had spoken about was, can we put those level 3, those priority 3 calls on the map, so as officers are driving through their zones, they pop up and they say, hey, there's a report call waiting here, and give them the opportunity to stop and address it on their own time, at their own discretion, if they feel like they have the time. And then it just evolved to say, well, if we're going to do that, why don't we put down situational awareness that for officer safety, like, hey, I know there's a gun in this house, or there was a domestic here the shift before where a gun was implied. Things that officers need to know. Good officers, when they start their shift, sometimes look at the unit history, or they'll run their own reports to see what happened the shift before. They'll find that data somewhere. This makes it a lot easier for them to just layer it on the map should they choose to. Or if it's a busy night, they could just take it off the map so it doesn't look too confusing for them. And then the other beauty of it is that if they're just driving around, when a new call comes in, a high priority one or immediate, like a level priority 1, 2, or 3, if it's integrated with the CAD, it automatically pops up where the location is with what the call is, and they can see that, hey, there's a new call that came out. They could potentially see it pop up on the map before dispatch even puts it out over the air.
And of course, because we're a logistics company, we also have incorporated things such as get me there as fast as possible. And then not only is the experience of the officer inside the car, again, this is software that gets installed in the car, they see the path, but there's also the dispatchers. The other one, not only do you just see dots floating around, you see their path, so you can see a lot of good stuff. I mean, this is one of my favorite screen here, is this one coming up here, is really, it shows everything. And this is actually a real one, a real picture of, this was many months ago, maybe about almost a year ago. And some of you, I don't know if you guys could see it, but you could see there's neighborhoods that need to be patrolled. You could see priority 1s here, you see 2s. You also see some gray ones. Again, now you understand the value of the grays. These are calls that have actually been cleared or closed, but we want them to stay there, just like the chief just explained. You can see other cars here. I love these things right here. These are other ones that I remember some of your crime analysts put on here for the after-hour clubs or something. What's the story about these guys here?
Yeah, well, like many communities, I'm sure, these after-hour pop-up parties are definitely causing a lot of problems here in the city of Schenectady, and, and really in the whole county, because there's individual groups of people that They'll go and they'll rent out a house, or they'll rent out a vacant storefront, and they'll put it out on social media that there's going to be a party there. They use Cash App for admission, and then it looks and feels like a regular party, except for when the party lets out. We usually have some really bad things happening, like fights, stabbings, shootings. We've even had homicides. So to be better able to identify where these things are happening, we started having officers be able to just pin map an attention point like this with something for another officer to pay attention to. And then as we develop more intelligence on that location, it might turn into a report or a referral to our special investigations unit and turn into a full-blown investigation. But it all has to start somewhere. And rather than it just being in one officer's notebook in the front pocket of their shirt, it ends up on this platform where it could be shared from shift to shift, or even for administrators to see it.
Yeah, it's really good. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, there's a question. Chief Clifford, how do you go about getting the buy-in of your team to use Patrolfinder?
And I'm not sure if everyone could hear you.
Yeah, question was, how did you go about the buy-in from your team to use Patrolfinder?
So I don't know if everyone heard, what's the buy-in? How did you get the buy-in from your officers?
Buy-in with police officers is always hard. So our approach was to have them be a part of this project from the beginning. We invited Tony and his team to our CompStat meetings. We talked regularly about what they needed to be on the road, what would help them. We made it perfectly clear to them that this was never going to be used to track them, to discipline them. This was a resource to help them do their job. So what we're finding is that, the officers that were there 9-10 years before this didn't necessarily buy in as much as the brand new officers, the 1, 2, 3-year-old officers, the ones that basically grew up playing video games. They were more accepting to this technology and using it than the old school officer who had all this information in their head and said that their way was perfectly fine. And I don't want to mislead you and say that none of those officers bought into it, because a lot of them did. And conversely, a lot of the younger officers aren't necessarily using it, but we are seeing a high level of usage, so much that one of the best things that I felt from a buy-in perspective was we have a really nice gym in the basement of our police department where officers on their lunch break can go down and work out. It's their own time to do whatever they want to do. And they sought out permission to put this platform on a TV down there just so they could monitor what's going on while they're working out. It wasn't mandated by me or anybody else, but they asked for it. And of course, we gave it to them because that buy-in was established where they liked seeing where other officers were, what they were involved in. Because at the end of the day, especially the younger officers, they don't want to miss out on anything. They want to be out there. They want to know what's going on.
That's awesome. That's really good. Well, that's a good question. Please keep monitoring us on here. So back to this big screen, which I love. Obviously, some of these attention points do have time-based, which means if they are keeping extra attention on these locations, perhaps it's like these nightclubs. I don't want to show them all the time. I mean, I don't want them on Thursday evening to maybe, from like 9 p.m. till 4 a.m. Only show up there. That way, as you're driving around, just keep an extra eye over there. And then, on Friday morning, they disappear. I don't need to see those dots on Tuesday afternoon or Tuesday night because it doesn't make sense. So these are all time-based, and this is really the big part. And of course, finally, we talk about these hot spots, and you can see there's an area up here. They're a little bit different color. They have different go time, and this is a real hot spot that I think you had it every 6 hours. So what happens is every street would just light up if it's been more than 6 hours. 6 hours and 1 minute, they light up. If it's within 6 hours, again, if multiple cars keeps driving over, the clock restarts, it resets. So obviously, we put a lot of effort here. I like the way I say we. I mean, these guys that are on the work put a lot of effort, and obviously now this hotspot is not a hotspot anymore. Give us a little bit. I mean, what did you do here? I mean, that's unheard of. I never expected that you were going to say that this hotspot is gone.
Yeah, again, wasn't the purpose for reaching out and asking for some help with this, but as we developed this, we had that aha moment to say, wait a minute, this could help us with knowing who's doing what in the hotspots. So our old school way of dealing with hotspots was tell patrol officers, go to this area and do enforcement. But we never really knew exactly what they were doing or where they were going and doing it. So we wanted to say, well, let's use this technology to drive officers there more often. Perhaps instead of driving by a neighborhood or a street once every 4 days, which is our goal time, for hotspots, we're going to want to have them go there every 4 hours to show that we're there, perhaps even get out of the car, go meet with business owners, deal with certain things. For this one particular hotspot, we said, well, let's have the patrol points refresh every 4 hours. And what we found was that we really couldn't pay much attention to, what was going on there, because after 4 days, the whole map would refresh and we couldn't really keep track of where the officers, whether they were there or not. So we decided to change hotspot patrol points to triangles. So they were clearly visible to officers that this is a hotspot. This is where you should be going. So now they're triangles. And conversely, with the other patrol points, as Tony had mentioned, they start off small, and if they get refreshed after 4 days, and those points that were never traversed after 4 days, they grow. So they're double the size. So you can start seeing bigger patrol points for areas that you haven't seen. And then maybe after 3 cycles of not hitting them, they turn red. So that's like an indicator to say, hey, you haven't been here in 12 days. Maybe you should be here. Maybe you should drive down this street. And as he mentioned, we haven't seen the red ones in a long time. We've been doing a really good job of getting out there and hitting them. And again, this isn't a mandate to the officers that they have to do it. It's a recommendation to them, because we all know that the job takes you where it takes you. But when you have that free discretionary time, all we're asking for is to pay some attention to certain areas, with the exception of hotspots. We put details out there saying hit the hotspots. So that's what they do. They hit the hotspots, and while they were there on this one particular hotspot, it just became a combination of having our presence there and intelligence gathering. You're developing intelligence in this area because it's a hotspot. There's crime that's been occurring there. There's always problems behind the crimes that need to be documented. So when the officers are in the area and they're documenting things, whether it be on a report or just on a field interview cards, it's being documented. And in this one particular neighborhood where we spent a lot of time and effort, we were able to shut down the nucleus of where the problems were starting, which was a corner store that was dealing drugs inside, and they had open air drug dealing on the outside. The whole neighborhood was a mess because of them. When we were finally able to shut that store down because of the intelligence that we were able to gather, as soon as that store was shut down, all the problems disappeared with continuous monitoring. Now the neighborhood is cleaned up, where it's no longer one of our hotspots based on crime data.
That's awesome. Moshe, did you see someone just post a question? And so I'm trying to read this right here. If the officer stops and of course drives over one of those hotspots, and you drive over the patrol points, is there a way to do this using a polygon? So that way, it's a zone. Great question. Right? I think I'm trying to read it. It's a little bit small for me. Did I catch all the things that person was trying to say?
Yes.
Clearly, patrol points are very refined, very specific. We'll talk about zone really soon. You're ahead of me right there. Great question. I love they use the word polygon. Those are the things we talk about. It's a polygon or it's a geofence, but really it's the zones. Really cool. So you could easily just create a zone. Now at this point, you could see how much time we're spending in that zone. So yeah, good question. Instead of just, I think you have like 30 dots. Well, maybe it's important that we spend, 5 hours a day as a department or 10 hours a day. All that report, and by the way, You're getting those reports, right? You get reports at nighttime, all that, how much time you spend on your big zones, but you can make those polygons as small as you want. I mean, we have other departments put them around streets because high traffic area. We want to know how much time are we spending on those streets, you know, whether they're stopped, maybe traffic control, or just, hey, just drive up and down that street. We got to just have presence. Let's face it, you see a police car, people slow down. By the way, Moshe, remember in the past, you used to see like an old police car, it was a civilian body, right? You remember that? There's no label of that. They still have the spotlight. Every time I would see it, I was like, is that a police? I mean, literally, be some old grandma driving that car because they bought it, you know, from an auction or something. But you didn't know. You thought it was like, that's a police car. So everyone like slowed right down. But then you realize it's grandpa's car,
right.
you know, but it was an old police car. I don't see those anymore. Are they just, you can't, nobody sells, they're not, you can't drive them anymore? Or they, yeah, just drive them to the end? What
Yeah,
happened?
I'm not sure.
Because remember it used to be like that? You used to see like the old Ford, right? It used to be, and they had the old spotlights and so forth. I mean, right, Rick? I mean, do you remember those things? Right?
Definitely.
I mean,
Definitely.
I don't see them anymore. So maybe you guys could help me understand why you don't see those anymore. But a lot of good stuff. Hey, you talked about young, let's face it, the new recruits, they're the young generation. They were born with having one of these devices in their hands, right? Their phones. And so technology, you know, makes them feel like, hey, I'm working in a place that you guys appreciate technology. And those are a big deal. You know, talk about navigation, how to get there. There's men and women in your department. They know exactly. They almost be like a little bit insulted. Like, what? I'm gonna let the computer tell me how to go from there. I know how to get there better than the computer. But some of your new recruits, they're new. They're using their phones. I bet you, if I ask you, how many of you would raise your hand saying, how many officers, especially the newer ones, use their phones to get from point A to point B? I bet you a lot of you would raise your hands on that, right? I mean, I think I saw it in your department all the time. Moshe, any more? You good?
And the second part of the question that was asked was, can we tell who entered that zone and how long they've stayed there?
Oh my goodness, yes. You could do a report by officers, by car, as a department, you name it. It's unlimited. Very good question. Very good question. Yeah, that's really how you tackle. And Chief, I mean, you guys put as an effort. And of course, you got, unfortunately, more hot spots in the city, but they put real effort. And real effort doesn't mean, hey, do your best when you got downtime. Who the hell's got downtime? You guys are, you know, I think you're in good shape with the recruitment, right? You're not down really, police officers. And you know, some of you out there down by a lot, some not so bad. Get a look at it. Could this type of technology, I fully recommend you use technology as a way to recruit officers, especially the newer ones, the younger ones. They want technology. And you know it, the bad guys sometimes have better technology than us, and we don't need that. We need to change that. So pretty cool stuff. Good question. Hope I answered that.
Yes.
Right, good. All right. We made a lot of conversation about handoff, right? About the handoff, the shift handoff. And I tell you, that was a big deal, you know? And I sat in those things. You talk about the notepad, right? And I see few men and women would take it out and make some notes. Again, I can't tell I have no idea what they're writing in there, but they're doing some. And some are just standing there saying, that's not my zone. Why do I care? And I'd probably be one of those people, by the way. So this is one of the dashboards that we built with these guys. And again, it's unlimited dashboards, unlimited. So these are the dashboards that you could just see during lineups that, oh, what's going on? Whether it's polos, it's the bulletins, or really anything. Well, what are the things that, I mean, what's a typical lineup that you guys have?
Yeah, you know, we run 3 shifts a day, so you know we do a lineup 20 minutes before the top of the hour on the shift. So we work, you know, 12 to 8, 8 to 4, 4 to 12, and we do lineup where we go over the items that made it to, we call them 25 items, which are important for officers to know, officer safety related, and, possibly somebody who's asking for extra attention. So what we thought was that, why can't a lot of the stuff that's set at lineup go right onto this platform, so that if an officer misses lineup for some reason, that they can still get that information. And then there's other things for shift handoffs that we felt were important, such as if I'm working a shift and I'm coming in at the end of the shift, and then something happened in my zone, like there's a house where there's a domestic brewing, where I knew it was going to be violent, where I might want to seek out the officer replacing me on the street and say, hey, pay attention to 123 Union Street. The house there, I got called in there, but I think something bad's going to happen. So instead of doing that face-to-face handoff of information, they can create an attention point. I know you can always send an email or a text message, but those are silos. This is putting that information on this platform, so the guy on the next shift and the shift after that can see it. And we found that this is improving communication department-wide across our 3 shifts, rather than basically the friends network that, hey, I like this guy, I'm going to have him go look for this person. Instead of doing that, they can let the whole shift know to look for this person, and it gets to be a lot more efficient for our operations.
Absolutely. I mean, you've had some ideas that potentially using this type of technology during the lineups, you could shrink some of that time. You could, maybe it's 20 minutes, maybe you could go only 10 minutes, because you could just talk about what's on the screen, but you could say, when you get in your car, just bring up the screen. And by the way, by the time you get to your car, it's possible the information is already outdated what you told the officers during lineup. So it makes a lot of sense, and really a lot less. Most, you got a question?
We have another question.
What do you got?
We have a question for the chief. Chief, how do you manage the data? Is someone in particular responsible for managing the stuff that's getting in and out, and make sure that all stuff is taken out of the system?
Good.
Yeah, that was
Good question.
It's a good question, and that was one of the things that we had to evolve over the last couple of years to get to the point where we're at now. But we do have a crime analyst that now manages it for us, and we do operate a real-time crime center that has a lieutenant in it, so there's some oversight. But the point of contact is a crime analyst that makes sure that the bulletins are updated, they're put in there, they're taken out. We've even talked to Tony and his team about an enhancement to it, where when you put a bolo or a bulletin up, there's actually a clock on it that will automatically take it off unless it's reset, so that we don't have old information on the platform. So we thought about that. So to answer your question is, it's been an evolving process. We have crime analysts that does it mainly. We want to allow officers to put things on there, but also have a supervisor approval. So if they put it on there, if it's to stay on there, it has to be approved by a supervisor or this analyst, because maybe we clean it up a little bit. They'll throw the information on there real quickly, and then we'll have an analyst clean it up, make it look more like a true bulletin with the proper wording and everything. Because what we're finding is a lot of these bolos that we're creating in the field, they are making their way to our crime analysis center, our regional crime analysis center. So we want to make sure that the product that we're putting out that's going upward to the community, the larger community, is professional looking and good. But we don't want time to have to pass to get it out there between the officer knowing that information and actually getting it out there. So we're allowing them to put it out there, and then by the time we disseminate it regionally, it gets cleaned up a little bit.
That's really nice. Those are, and again, it's the common operating picture we talk about, right? You want to be consistent, and you want to be repeatable, right? Same thing. Those are the things that you get better and better. When it's something that it becomes a process that you just keep repeating over and over again, that's how people improve. And we talked about bulletins, of course. That was one of our first features that we had in there, that you could upload images, and I know you had some products specific for that. You talk about emails. Emails are cool, but really, what about knowing did they read it? I mean, you could put read receipt in and so forth, but this is where, by the way, I use my email unread feature. I don't know about you guys. I use, when I like something that's really important, I can flag it or I right click and say unread. You know why? Because I don't want it to be stuck in my read emails. I make it bubbles to the top. So that's the way I use my emails. I get a lot of emails on a daily basis. My Williams Sonoma emails, by the way, are still my favorite. I don't know why I don't unsubscribe, but I love it. Gives me an idea how to create some new omelets, and they're trying to sell me some stuff. I could easily unsubscribe, but it's cool. Emails are overwhelming. We know it. So we created a whole new system just for this, so they can do this. Really cool things.
The other problem we found with emails was, again, from an officer safety perspective, emails drove a lot of officers to print out those emails and bring them with them in paper form into the field, which then could sometimes end up in the wrong hands. Yeah. We've had it happen before. So having it on the computer, really easy to get to, we significantly reduced that liability that we have.
Wow, I didn't even think about that. That's a good one. That's a good one. Still going? You're going to tell me if there's more questions. Good stuff right here.
Sure.
So the common operating picture, I think it's something that we've been talking about this for a while. And our huge market is, again, 1 out of 3 kids in North America took the bus this morning using our technology. And they'll take the bus going home using our technology. And of course, certain states like New York and Texas, it's really close around 1 out of 2. But so this is important to us to have a way to overlay building footprints, whether it's a school or a mall or really those type of buildings. Footprints are huge, right? I mean, this is cheap. We thought, and by the way, this is nothing fancy. I don't want you to think that, oh my goodness, I got to get a digitizer. No, you could take a simple PDF within 5 minutes. You could take a PDF and add it to the map. It's really that easy. So it doesn't have to be a GIS specific layer, but you add it, and now becomes a layer that you can turn on, turn off. We've talked about this so much. We talked about other places. We talked about some other businesses that they're a little bit worried, right?
Yeah. I mean, like many departments, we've been training on response to active shooters, like many communities have, and we're investing lots of time and effort. And all your vulnerable locations, whether it's schools or theaters, casinos, we have it all here in Schenectady, and we want to be able to put this information basically at the fingers of the officers when they need it immediately. Because as we know with active shooters, time matters. We don't have time for somebody to bring a blueprint from the police station or make a phone call to get it. We want them to just be able to pull it up and say, okay, this is the area where they're reporting the shooting is happening, and this is the door we can get into. So it's not the best information, but it's enough to give them what they need right at that certain time. Fortunately, we haven't had to use it.
Moshe, you got something?
We do. And there's a question here. It says, does Patrolfinder require special hardware?
Does it require special hardware? That's a great question. Well, it really installs on your MDTs, your mobile data terminals, and it's just whatever you have there. By the way, we started out, remember this? We thought we want to make this mobile, that way they can move around. So we initially created this product that's a mobile app, right? It was an app, either Android or iOS. So we started that, and I think the chief thought that this is great. I think we did it on a first version. We worked on a Samsung device, nice Android, nice rugged, beautiful. And I remember we were so excited. We did a lot of development. Like, all right, now we're going to actually. By the way, a lot different to have a tablet at your desk than to have a tablet in the car. I mean, I don't have to explain to many. A lot of people are thinking, what are you talking about? So we couldn't find a spot. Remember that, Chief? Like, you had so much stuff. You had the computer, you had the keyboard. There's so much. We're thinking, where are we going to mount this guy? So we mounted it on the armrest or near the console. I'm thinking that's a good spot. Again, great spot if you're not moving. But if you're traveling, how do you look down by your knees as you're driving? So that did not work well. So great question. It works on any browser enabled PC, whether it's inside the cars, and we do provide a GPS puck because GPS, we know you already have it. And again, we use GPS that's in their cars. There were just too many out there, and we just didn't want that delay. As we fully have all the navigation and so forth, you can't have any delay. You can't tell an officer, turn right on Main Street 10 seconds after you passed Main Street. And that's really the problem. And then we couldn't have that. But these are good questions. I hope I answered that. By the way, anytime you want to get more answers to your questions, go to patrolfinder.com. There's tons of places there. And of course, we're calling you guys. We'll love to get a phone call from you if you want. But believe me, we're making tons of phone calls. We're traveling throughout the country now to see many of you. So look forward to seeing you guys. So cool things. Another part that we thought is this NAP viewer is to overlay like events, some fun events, whether it's emergency response or really more of a just normal planning. I know like this street right here, it gets shut down a couple of times, right? A couple of times a year, right? Right. So what do you normally do with that? Do you have a free ring binder, right? I mean, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah. Pen and paper, the handed down files that are on Microsoft Word or some format where you have to sift through the computer to find them.
Right. So why not put these things? And of course, we see other use cases, whether it's an emergency response, put this layers in there. So I think those are, so we're wrapping up. Moshe, any questions before? We've got a couple more slides here, and I think we wrap up.
And there was one related question to geofencing of other examples that we can think about their regions.
Geofence, good one. Good. Wow, get some good words. So geofencing is that whole polygon that someone just asked about just previously. It's the polygon, it's the region. I think we could, around hospitals, right? I think we're talking about around hospitals that to see how much time officers, if they have to go to the hospital for an incident, right, an accident, well, how much time are they spending there? And so, maybe it's enough amount of time, or maybe you gotta have a conversation with the staff here at the local hospital saying, hey, we got to figure out how to get these officers leave quicker, right? But again, it's just data. So yeah, there's a lot of use cases. What other use cases can you picture, Chief, to use? Again, not a big zone, but the small polygons. Any? I mean, obviously, hotspot was definitely one of them.
The hotspot was the one that comes to mind the most. It could be anything. It could be any kind of pop-up event, whether it's a block party that you just want to block it off to let officers know to be aware of it. Anything that you just want to put on there and have a plan for it. You draw it out, and you put a little time and effort ahead of time, which is the planning part, and then should something happen that you know where your resources are, and that where your staff is.
That's right.
And where to enter, exit, all things like that.
And really, the big part is to say, to really create those shapes to get idea how much time we're spending in there, right? And if you have a goal, how much time we should be in that shape. Well, then are you within the goal? Are you under? You analyze it. I always say, don't ask if you don't like the answer, or don't ask something if no matter what the answer's going to be, you're not going to do anything about it. Well, don't even bother doing anything. I mean, it sounds right. So then I see 2 minutes. I see 2 fingers up. So thank you. We're going to wrap up with really the officer zones. This is really the patrol zones. But again, we've talked about this like crazy about these zones could be as big as you want to see your assigned zone, how much time I'm spending in my zone versus out of zone and so forth. I see a question.
There is one final question, and hopefully we can get it in. Mobile app. Can I track officers on foot?
Wow, that's a great question. So again, we started with a mobile version. So because we started that, this is an app also. So an officer could be logged in on their PCs, on their mobile data terminals and on their phones or phones that you applied. So yeah, you could, we're using GPS from the phone. So all cool stuff. Again, time and zones. These are big things here. And I know we're wrapping up here in time, but wow, tons of reports that these guys can have, whether it's how much time you're in those zones, how much time you're supposed to be in that zone, before and after, like, if you know, maybe you bring some new people on board, how's it looking? Some people are, listen, it's a bell curve. You always have rock stars, then you have someone not so rock stars, and then majority of people live in the middle. And this is where it's the fact, no matter what industry you're in. So tons of reports, and this is where I believe you get data to get better decisions. It's leadership. You got to analyze, you get your insight, and you make some decisions. So I think let's wrap up, Chief. Anything you want to say? Say good night and goodbye to everybody.
I just want to add that time and zones is important. One of the things we talked about in the development of this was equitable policing, not over policing a neighborhood. Because a neighborhood has a hotspot area, we were cognizant that so many police officers would hit that area and people would be inadvertently affected by it. So, time and zone, while we manage it effectively, it definitely helps with us spreading out our resources and, throwing that blanket over our community for public safety. So appreciate everybody's time for today.